good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Kage, with
Neff.
And Buttons.
and today we're hitting off another episode of the Popcorn Square. Today we're going to talk about Alien Invasion, most notably Quiet Place Day 1 that just came out. We're going to talk about that today and a few other topics. But let's kick this off. So recently, the three of us went and saw Quiet Place Day 1. We're going to go around the table and see what the others think about this. I thought it was a pretty good film. I really enjoyed myself. I say it all the time and I'll say it again, I love a good origin story. If you know anything about the Quiet Place movies, aliens come from space, basically, and their whole gimmick is silence. They're very, very sensitive to noise. If you cough, if something drops on the floor, they're coming. And this pretty much upped the ante on what we've seen on the other films. It does not take place following the family from the other two films. It follows a completely new environment, completely new set of characters, but it was very well executed, I think. Very well done, seeing the chaos breaking out in New York City. You know, the other films we had, what was it? It was like literally, no pun intended, in quiet places, like out in the boonies.
Yeah, rural.
Yeah.
Suburban places.
To me, I'd say upstate New York.
Yeah, most
Okay.
likely.
Yeah.
Because at the end of this film, they do tie it to the second film characters
Yes.
that you see. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that too, because they tie it, but they don't tie it directly.
Right. Yeah. Like, you're so used to these other settings, and the idea of having it in New York City, the city that never sleeps. I think that was innovative in a sense for the franchise. But let's go around the table and just see what you guys think. Neff?
Oh, yeah, I gave the movie a 7.5 out of 10. Pretty cool little introduction to the events that take, occurrence in Quiet Place 1 and 2. There are a couple characters that you see in Quiet Place 2 that are in this film as well, so I thought that was pretty interesting to bring them in. Although they weren't in the film as much as I thought they would have been in the film, they're kind of just there as Easter eggs almost. But I thought the story was decent. I thought the acting was pretty good. There were some dead spots here and there, but I think they kind of utilized those dead spots for character building, and I guess trying to build a connection with the audience with the character. So it kind of makes sense to me. I thought the pacing was fine. Nothing really new when it comes to the aliens. We didn't really learn anything new about them. Like I said, we see them come down to Earth, and everything gets started there with the events that take place in the later films. But there's really no information that we don't know about the aliens that's been given to us in this film. That would have been kind of nice to see. Maybe they do another Quiet Place that follows Quiet Place 2, and I think that is in production for Quiet Place 3. So I think maybe we'll get more of an explanation there. But then again, this could be a movie that doesn't need an explanation. You know, it might just need to be what it is on its face, and you accept it for what it is. But I thought the film was decent. Not a lot of weak points, really. I do have this one ranked, I guess, third out of all the Quiet Place films, but that doesn't mean the film was bad. And I think the box office did pretty good. I think I saw an article that said this actually performed better on the opening weekend than any of the other Quiet Place films did. So 2 thumbs up for those guys. Lupita did great. Even her co-star did great in the film. He comes in probably midway through the film. The cat was, you could argue, the star of the film. There is a cat in the film there. It has a big place in the film.
He didn't wink, though.
He did not wink. But there is a bookstore in the film called Argyle. So I know they put that in there for Kage specifically. So very interesting. Some of the things that were in this
We're
film.
going to talk about that.
But yeah, definitely recommend this film if you haven't seen it. It's something to break up the monotony of cinema this year. It's also for adults as well. I also think this movie could be appreciated by teenagers. I don't know if it's good for a younger audience as far as under 15 years old, but I think it kind of has a sweeping demographic and it will do well. We're going to talk about the box office a little bit, but that was my review of the film. You guys should go watch it if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen the other Quiet Place films, go watch those as well. The more you know about the series, the more you'll appreciate the film itself. But pretty good film. Everybody did good on it, and I think it's going to be a success. Buttons, what do you got?
Yeah, so I honestly, for me, this movie, it did not meet my expectations. And, that I guess is just personally what I would have liked the movie to have been, versus, what the movie actually was. It wasn't, nobody here in our group is going to say that the movie was bad. The movie was good. It was a solid movie. Me, I think personally, it was just more along the lines of what I wanted out of the story and what I wanted out of the characters. I don't feel like it met those things for me. In these type of movies, especially because it's a survival movie, I want an emotional connection to the character. Like I want to either, if they're a bad character in the story, I want to see them have like this, glorious justified death of, because they were a bad person kind of thing, and like they get their just desserts, like karma. And then, if they're the good person, if they're, struggling and trying to survive, I want them to come to a conclusion to where either they are, safe, or they have some redemption moment of where it's like, well, even if they weren't able to make it, or they had to stay behind, or whatever the case may be, it was some glorious, noble sacrifice that they made. And I feel like that's where they kind of fell short with this, is because, not to give too much away of the story for those people who have not seen it yet, I feel like there was characters that were introduced, like a quarter of the way into the story, that I feel like if they had kept those characters as her companions, it would have been a much more, I guess the word that I'm thinking of is like a much more noble cause for her, like as she's trying to, do her task of, escaping the city. She has her own reasons, and I feel like, you do get to build some with her character, but at the end of the day, for this particular movie and what her character is, and I'll just go ahead, they set her up, she's dying already at the beginning of the movie. Like that is like kind of before the aliens come, she's living in hospice center. So, the fact that, aliens come and she's dying anyway, like it's this whole situation of like, does she continue to keep fighting, or does she just give in and say, well, I was going to die anyway, so what's the point, but that's where you kind of build off of her character throughout the story, is seeing like, even though she knows that she's on death's door already, like she still continues to fight throughout it. So you kind of want to, keep cheering her on to be like, you know what, I'm going out, but I'm not letting these aliens be the ones to take me out. So like in that sense, you get to see like that side of humanity that we all, love to see in terms of overcoming odds or obstacles. But I would have preferred to have gotten some more information on the aliens. I kind of hoped that because it was going back to the beginning, that there would be some new information. Because in the original Quiet Places, they're in like very rural territory. And so you kind of assume that while the John Krasinski's character would like get on the radio and try and listen for news and find out information, being in a big city like New York, that they would have more information coming in about the aliens, about where they came from, and of course, like how nobody saw them coming. We have satellites and stuff out there where it's kind of like nobody saw them coming, or maybe like, maybe in a future episode or a future movie, they could actually explain like the government side of things, like, because I feel like there's like probably a whole slew of, content that they could bring us from a government angle or viewpoint, as, like when you watch movies like Independence Day, and those, you always see like, oh yeah, the government knew they were coming, or we knew about them well before, and all this other stuff. So it would have been interesting to kind of see some of that information come about, or just new information, because in the first two movies, and then even in this movie, it doesn't really explain, other than the fact that there's noise that they're attracted to, the aliens. It doesn't really explain if they're killing people just because they hear them or if they're killing them for food. Like, I
Yeah.
can't think of any of the movies where I actually see them eating people. Like, which
Yeah.
most of the time, aliens, like if they're gonna kill somebody, it's either because they feel like they're a threat or because they're food, or both. So in this, you still kind of are lost to, like, you do actually see them eating in this movie, but not people.
Yeah.
So that was like really the only new information that I caught, was that, you have like the big city, and then there's lots of death. Well, we know that there's millions of people who live in New York City. And then there's scenes later where there's empty streets, like no bodies laying around, and you're like, well, where's all the people?
I mean, they showed.
Very few, very
Yeah,
few.
they were there just to show, hey, yeah, but I see what you mean. There wasn't a lot of that.
Especially early, like the very first early
Well,
scenes
yeah.
of it, there's bodies everywhere because they're, initially attacking. But then later they show scenes where they're kind of like walking through the city. They're telling them to get out of the city or whatever, and you just see them walking, and there's very few like dead people around. And it's like, that doesn't make sense, because who was out in the streets clearing the bodies then? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
That's something to think about, yeah.
so, and again, that was the things that I kind of like wanted some information on. But otherwise, like I said, I gave the movie 7 out of 10, simply because there was things that I wanted out of the characters and out of the story that I didn't get, and thought would have made a little bit more sense if they had changed things just slightly here and there. I know right after the movie, we talked about some of the actions of the characters. And obviously, when you're writing a story and you're trying to move the story along, there are certain actions that propel the movie forward. And some of them seemed a little ridiculous in terms of the logic behind the action. So, and I guess you could say, well, this whole movie took, I think we counted the days. It was about 5 days that it took place over?
I say between 3 and 5.
3 and
Yeah,
5?
I was
Because
gonna say,
there's definitely times where they're sleeping and then it's a new day, so.
Right.
But probably at maximum, or a minimum, 3 days, and at
That's
maximum,
what
like
I'm
maybe
thinking.
5 days. Because it's kind of, there's some scenes where you're just kind of like, okay, maybe it's the same day, maybe it's a new day.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, Neff, the characters that you are familiar with, they did not play a big role in this movie at all, which I would have preferred them to have a little bit more interaction with those characters. and
Specifically because they don't last long in
the
second one.
Yeah, so it would have been.
Give them a
So
little
you
more
would
screen
think,
time because.
right, you give them some more
Yeah.
screen time in this film,
You know-
at least before we get to the events of what happens with as far as their fate goes.
Right.
So something I want to throw out there. So yeah, I didn't say my score. So I actually gave it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it.
fair.
But I do acknowledge both of your guys' points, because you're absolutely right. I always say that I like a good origin story, and that's something I really wish I would have seen. They don't say that they come from space, that they're mutants and escape science experiment. We don't get that in the other movies. We see them coming from space. That's all we get as far as origin. As far as learning more about the creatures, we don't really learn anything new. We know that they can't swim, and they really, really don't like loud noises.
And apparently they can't breathe underwater.
Okay,
but
that's the biggest.
It doesn't explain why
Yes,
they can't.
yes. So we know that they come from space, and that is the biggest plot hole in this whole franchise. It's like, all right, they can survive flying through space, coming through the burning atmosphere, but water's a no-go.
They're Stitch.
They're Stitch. Like,
Experiment
like we don't
626.
know. Like, okay,
Their density is too great.
the
They can't
closest-
survive in water.
the closest thing I can think of, hear me out, is the movie Signs. They said the aliens can't do water. It's like acid to them. It's like, it's not a very deep explanation, but it's like, it's enough to move the plot forward. But here, it's just like, no, that it's not acid to them. They just can't swim.
No, he was swimming.
Not successfully.
Well, no, not for long is what it was.
Yeah, like they tried,
Short-lived.
they tried, and it's just like I would have liked to, I don't know, seen some addressing of that. Like, okay, you can survive flying through space, but you get in deep water. Oh no, that's it. And it's like if
And
you
there
just
are
hang-
some questions, not to cut you off, about where I was talking about the mind theory with these aliens, because guys,
yeah, I
if
had
you
brought up-
notice, think
yeah.
about this, right? So we do have that attempt in the subway, not to give away too much spoilers, right? We have that attempt, but then at the end, towards the end, they stop.
At the
when
dock.
Right. So how would they know?
And
The-
that was the thing that I had brought up too, is you see some of them on the beach, running to the dock, and then you see some of them that are up on the street,
Correct.
and they're all running to the dock. Now, one of the characters jumps into the water because he knew that they can't swim.
Correct.
They had actually been broadcasting that over the radios, which is what they kind of they told you about that in the second movie as well,
Right,
that
right.
they can't survive in the water. And with the thought behind their intelligence, it, to some degree, they don't have a lot of intelligence. And then in other circumstances in these movies, they
It's
are
inconsistent,
intelligent.
yeah.
It's
I-
like at some point it's like, oh, we don't know what we're doing, just blindly attacking, but they don't attack each other. So that's where we get into like that whole, maybe they have a different way to communicate, whether it's some kind of clicking or telecommunications or something, I don't know, telekinesis or something, or a scent that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Maybe they can scent
Well, again,
each
that
other.
goes back into what we were saying, is like just a little more explanation
Right.
of their biology, of like, okay, like, come on, there's got to be something
Right.
that you learn from
They
these
could
things.
connect
And
everything.
They
so
can
when-
connect, yeah.
Right, and so when you see them chasing him down the dock, he jumps into the water, and then there's one that kind of like reaches for him, but he knows where the end of the dock is. So it's either got to be one of those situations where one of them had already jumped off the dock and realized, oh, hey, this goes into water bad, or it's the other ones were, but they can't
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
So that's the
that's
thing
the
that,
thing.
that's the
is
thing
they-
that
you
threw
can't
me off,
say
is
that
it's
they
like if
watched their friends jump into the water. They didn't watch anything. They
Well,
don't have
but,
eyes.
but again, it would have to be like, as soon as he got into the water, then they would communicate back like, oh crap, I'm drowning, oh crap, I'm drowning.
They
And they're
hear
like,
splashing, and maybe they're like, that
Right.
sounds
Well,
like
and
one of my
they-
own.
But they're not afraid to get in the water, as we saw with the very first movie, and then even with this movie, there's the fact that they bring up that the water will mask the noise of humans. So like, they have very delicate sense of hearing, but with the water, they're able to distinguish and rule that out as, okay, that's not a person, that's water. Like
Their whole thing
even-
is sensitive hearing. You take that away from them, they have no power.
Well, they're confused, right? So, like you mentioned before, you have ambient noise, right? And they even, at the beginning of the movie, they mentioned that. They say like the ambient noise of New York City is, and I don't remember what the decibel was, but
It's
they
a
were like,
continuous scream.
yeah, exactly. So it's like at any one given point, the noise and from the ambient noise of New York City is the same level as a continuous scream. So it's very noisy. And then there's obviously parts in the movie where it's all super, super quiet. They're all being quiet. But as we saw even with the very first movie, there's the moments where even just the sound of regular breathing or accelerated breathing because you're having like a panic attack or something is enough to attract them. They can hear you, and they can even get close enough to potentially even hear your heartbeat. So being in water and hearing like the trickling of water or a waterfall, or in the case, in this movie, there was a fountain, like that's enough to mask breathing or, the very minimal sounds that person makes. They can even walk through water and it's not quite so obvious as long as you're not like splashing around. But that's the thing that kills me about this movie is like there's so many times where they're like, oh, we know they're attracted to sound, we're gonna throw a rock or we're gonna smash a window or set off a car alarm or whatever, and that's gonna get them to do that, and then they run in the opposite direction, and it's like, why are you running? You're making more noise by running away. Like, you could be tripping over stuff and make it like, you know.
Especially when
I
the
think-
city's falling apart. But
Exactly.
this is becoming one of those movies, though, where if you, like, analyze it too much and you're just like, okay. I think they kind of wrote A Quiet Place for it to be very surface level, like Alien film, and it just happened to do really well.
Yeah.
But if you, like, really start picking apart the movie, it's like, okay, that don't make sense. That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
It's
like, you
it's
know what
almost
I mean?
it's the joke
It's-
about like, why are you running into the cemetery? Like,
Oh, right.
let's go into the basement where there's no way to escape.
I think they did a lot of things right with this film, though, and specifically the use of the budget, which I applaud them for. And I'm looking at the runtime now, because we were in the film, and there was times where it was like we said it was kind of slow, but the runtime is 99 minutes, so we're hour and 39, not too bad. If it's one thing people don't like, it's sitting in a movie that's bloated on time and there's nothing happening
Filler.
to fill
Right.
that time up.
Yeah.
And if it
Yeah.
is filling the time, it's not enough to keep you interested in the film. So I think they did a good job with keeping this
Yeah,
film
it didn't
to
it
the
didn't
point.
feel like
I
it didn't
think-
feel like it was too long.
I think the biggest selling point, to me at least, in this film is the change in setting, kind of again turning the whole quiet thing on its head. Wow, what a great concept to film a movie that's all about being quiet in the loudest city possible. You know what I
Very
mean? And,
interesting, yeah.
So it's like
It's a
it was
cool angle.
It was a cool angle. It was cool to see that. I really the herd. We've never seen herds in the other movies.
It's like one or two, maybe
yeah,
three.
they're being hunted by three or something, and one by one throughout the movie they get killed. But there's always the one in the end. But like it's crazy seeing Manhattan just a stampede of these things, and they're not just running the streets, they're climbing at the buildings, trying to jump at the helicopters. These things are angry and pissed, and it's just like, wow, you know, like it was visually speaking, it was very cool to see that.
Yeah.
But then once New York fell, the movie's just really following two people,
Right.
For the most
And
part.
you know, and I guess.
but I mean, tell me this, because there's a scene where you have a big group of people going through.
Oh, yeah.
They're survivors, right? And they're telling them, hey, get to the other side. And tell me you are not sitting there looking at all of these group of people who have been told and are now aware that they are attracted by sound, and they have people with freaking wheelie luggage and wheelchairs and like all of this stuff that generates a lot of noise through a city that should be full of glass and broken things, and they're just walking along.
This goes right in what Neff just said, though.
I mean, one of the things that her character did early on is she goes and she's looking for food, right? So she goes into like a convenience store. She doesn't grab the plastic bag, all right, that's going to crinkle and make lots of noise. She grabs a cloth bag. And it was not for environmental reasons, people. This was so that she did not attract
Practical.
noise. She did not attract noise. And I'm like, if she knows this, then all these other people who are survivors know this as well. Like, I mean,
I would disagree with that.
They're
because-
Common
blasting
sense
it.
ain't so
they're
common.
blasting it over on
Yeah.
the overhead things, though, like on the helicopters that are
Oh, I
flying
get it.
over.
But
I
you
get
can
it.
put things on. You can put things on TV. You can blast it, make the biggest sign. But in times of panic, natural disaster, all bets are off. You can forget politeness.
then-
You can
We see
forget
this in all
logic.
types of these movies,
And then
like
the boat-
Quarantine, Cloverfield.
You
the
can't.
boat
Well, yeah,
with the
you
freaking
can't.
foghorn, like really? They're like, oh yeah, come, we're over here.
Yeah, but if you're on a
Bong,
boat,
bong,
if you're
bong.
on a boat or in the sky, you can be as loud as you want.
But how
you're
are they
safe.
supposed to get to you? How are any survivors supposed to get to you without being killed by all the ones that you've attracted to you? How are they supposed to? That's
That's
what
the
I'm
funny
saying.
part. It's like we're over here, and then
I
all the
know,
aliens
yeah.
are chilling out,
Yeah.
and that
Well,
could
how
explain
else-
why they're all at the dock like that.
I mean,
How are they gonna? But how
You know?
they can't do sign language over the interwaves?
Exactly.
Like
These are the holes of the film.
these are the
that's what it
holes.
is.
These are the holes of the film. But it's like
That's why I gave it a
That's what I'm
7.5.
saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have the helicopters that are all like chasing the aliens like across from the other side, and they're, and they chase it. They chase the helicopter. So really, all the helicopters had to do was fly over. All the aliens chase them, and that's why the people felt safe. To
there's a
try to go in the opposite
YouTube
direction.
channel called "How It Should Have Ended."
It should have ended.
Buttons. You got a job.
There's actually a funny video that I saw. I didn't click on, but it was talking about some of the issues with the movie, like in the aliens.
Right.
And I think I'm gonna send it to you guys because I
Okay.
think this
Yeah.
guy actually dissects what you guys are talking about. Like, oh, really sensitive to sound? How did they get here? Like, what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
How did
yeah.
it work like that?
I feel
But-
like there's more
Oh, for sure.
to be discovered.
They have to
but
really,
They got to do it.
yeah,
the right
they
way.
really got to disclose this. This is how you're gonna really wrap it up. Nice bow and ribbon. It doesn't have to go 10 movies. It can go.
Yeah.
I honestly, if they stopped here, I would be fine with that. How
I
they
agree.
did stop with the second one, it was cool. I could see them doing one more to follow and in that story with the family, but let's get some more information on these aliens because it's one of those things where it's like you didn't really learn
I
anything
either-
about
I
them. Like
either
they're
want-
there, but I like learning about what's
Yeah.
like when Cloverfield, for example. I'm gonna use
Mm-hmm.
Cloverfield again. They don't go into everything as far as Cloverfield's origin, but they do give you information that explains to the audience what happened. Oh, the offshore drilling. Oh, woke up Clovey. He was underwater. You know what I mean? Got him out, woke him up, and then he came onto
Right.
the surface. It's like
Yeah,
even
Pacific
that's more
Rim.
of an explanation of what we got from this.
Yeah,
we still don't
true.
have an explanation of why they're even on Earth.
Yeah.
Honestly, like,
Well, Pacific
did they
Rim
really
was one of
explain why
those-
the aliens are on Earth? Like,
No.
really?
No, they never do.
They're just here. It's like,
They're
oh,
just they
okay.
fell
But-
from space and now they're killing everybody.
Right.
But I think it's kind of like
not that you're supposed to know like what planet they're from, but
Mm. Well-
you get what I'm saying.
There's been
Yeah.
other alien movies
Right,
where
right,
it's
right.
like, okay, I can't think of the name of a specific one.
War of the
but
Worlds.
War of the Worlds, I guess, would be one of them. But no, I just mean like where in the movie they explain, they're like, hey, they're here, they're like locusts. They go from planet to
Right,
planet,
right, right.
destroy
I see
all
what
of the
you're saying.
natural resources,
Yeah.
and then go to the next planet and do the same thing, and rinse and repeat,
Right.
right? And so that at least gives you like, hey, it's us or them kind of thing. Like, we either have to
Yeah.
find a way to destroy them or get them to leave, or they will kill us all. And in this, it's like they're here killing everybody, but you don't know why. Like, they're just, are they looking for a new place to set up? They don't really
Like
show.
you said, they don't eat.
You don't see
people,
them. You don't
so-
see them eating anybody. But at the same time, you do know that most of the time the bodies disappear. In the first few movies, it made it seem like it's the other surviving members that go out, find the bodies, bury them, or whatever. But in the big city, you're like, well, the bodies are gone. Who was picking them up? There's nobody out there who's going out in the street to risk to try and pull
Especially
the
in
dead
the
bodies
heavily
in.
populated.
Right. So, I mean, again, I was like, well, where's all the bodies? And so, yes, there's some holes, and I'm not going to give away all of the different little things that they did show. Like I said, there is a scene where you see them eating, but it's not people. So you're like, where did that food
we
come
don't
from?
even know what
that was.
that
Exactly, that's what
was.
I'm
Like,
saying. And I
because-
had some theories, but I'm not going to go into it for the people who haven't seen the movie.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, again, we keep saying it. Definitely don't want to spoil.
Yeah, not too
I
much.
see them eating, and I'm like, I think I know what that is, but I'm not sure.
well, when we first saw it, we all thought it was an egg. We thought it was like,
thought it was hair.
oh, really? Okay.
It looked like the turf of
You thought it
somebody's head,
Oh,
like
okay.
a scalp. But that's what it looked like. I didn't see eggshells. I didn't see an egg. I saw a tuft of hair. And I'm like, are
Oh,
they
okay.
eating a dog? Are they eating?
Yeah, but
is
then
it
when
a
they were
person?
eating
but
it, it
but
was-
It kind of
wasn't-
looked like almost like a mushroom, like growth.
with hair.
on top of it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Okay. And to be fair,
It
this
looked
is-
like organic, like matter.
It was
Because then you
definitely-
see the
It was definitely organic,
the
yeah.
goo, the pink goo, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, so
Like, I
what's this
wanna-
from? There's a lot of what's this and what's that.
But they don't bother to
Yeah, they gotta
explain.
explain that. They gotta explain that
And-
more.
yeah.
Just because it brings it full circle. The more I understand about a film,
Mm-hmm.
the better I feel about the film. Because I'm like, that makes sense. I see why they did that for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
If it's all these things where it's just kind of like, well, what if? Well, what if? It's like, okay,
Well,
there's
okay.
a what if movie, and it's like, well, let's get some answers for this
Yeah.
thing.
One thing, and this is not the best connection, but I think of like monster movies, alien movies, zombie movies, or The Walking Dead. They never give you a direct origin of where these things came from. Is it a science experiment? Is it whatever? The story just kind of throws you in it, and you just follow a group of survivors, and you see the ugliness of humanity, and that's what Quiet Place is. It's just another boogeyman thing where it's like, we're not really too focused on where these things come from, their biology, their history, their ambitions,
It's
or whatever.
survival.
It's just, hey, these things are more of the backdrop, and the
And let's
story
look at
is
the
really
human
about the
dynamic.
human dynamic, and literally two humans, and it shows groups of humans, but the story always goes back
Right.
to these two, and I think that's really what it's about, and don't think too deeply into
Yeah,
it.
I think, yeah,
Now,
I
of
agree.
course, movie buffs such as us, we're going to make those analysis, try to figure out the who and the why, the motivations, and point out plot holes. That's what we are. We are diehard film enthusiasts. That's why we do this. I feel like I really would have liked an origin. That being said, we're 3 films deep. I think I agree with Neff. I don't need a Fast and the Furious treatment. I don't need 10,
Yeah, not
20
for this.
films. It's like, if you would have made Quiet Place like a one-off, that would go down in history as like a gem in film right there. Like, one and done. I get it. It's good. The second one, okay, it connects the 2 stories. If you would have left it there, I would have been good. This one, was it needed? I'm going to lean towards no. I know
Because
I
you're
just
not
gave
getting new information.
Right.
And
It's more of the same
It's interesting
thing.
because it's a different take. It's a
different setting, different
setting.
take. Yeah, so that was my positive draw from it. But you didn't give me anything new. I don't
Right.
know what these things are. Okay, they came from space. That's the only thing I know.
Yeah.
They didn't come from
Like
Area
you said,
51,
apart from
whatever.
the pink goo, like you're not, and they don't explain any of it.
There's a lot- yeah,
So
there's a
you're,
lot
You're
that's
just
not
like, okay,
explained.
so here's some interesting other things, but you don't know how it connects. What, is it poisonous? Is it, runoff? Is it something, like from their crash site? Like what's, like maybe they this or maybe they that. And I'm sure there's probably tons of theories on what it could be or how it connects to the
Right.
their origin or what's
But-
going on with them. But we are not left with any answers as to
Yeah,
what it is.
Yeah, the film doesn't show, because that's what a film is supposed to be. You're supposed to, what you see is what you get. And all the stuff we're saying, it's all speculation. That's great to have
Right.
dialogue. It gets people talking. Maybe that was their intention in making the film. But regardless, they didn't really tell us anything new. And so
Yeah.
if they never made another Quiet Place, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. If you make one more film, Hollywood, if you're listening, if you make one more Quiet Place film, you had better give an origin
Or kill them.
or show humanity's rise,
Right,
like
exactly.
kind of like
What's the end game? for
Get-
this?
get the
Do
Planet of the Apes
humans
thing.
win,
Yeah.
and they eradicate the
Yeah, do they
alien
find-
species,
yeah, exactly.
or
Do they
is
find
there
a
a
way?
standoff and the aliens win? There has to be a conclusion because
That would
just
be
keep
interesting,
going.
though.
It's like, okay, well,
what is
there
it that
has
you
to-
want from us?
Right.
Peace. No.
They actually talk.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, they know English.
actually talk.
They've been watching
So
YouTube.
this movie did a budget of $67 million, which is an amazing budget, and it's made $203 million, so it has 3x. It's a blockbuster.
Yeah, nice.
So then it goes right back to the point. Okay,
Or
did
it's a
good.
success. I say
It's a success.
Blockbuster's 4x.
Yeah.
3x, it is a success. Blockbuster, I think there's a lot of competition right now. It's not going to get to Blockbuster level, I don't believe. But
It's
I think
enough to
to be on the
greenlight
third
another
installment,
movie.
for sure. Third installment, You know, like I said, more successful in the debut than the other two films, okay? And we've already 3X. Very successful. I do think they are going to green light for another film. Like Kage said, I don't want the Fast and Furious treatment for this series. I feel like the less films you do, the better it's going to be as far as concentrating the content that you have with A Quiet Place. We do not want to dilute the film. I think we all agree at this table that the film was a pretty good film. Not the best, could have been better. There's some holes. Every movie has holes. No movie is really perfect. But overall, the film was good. We definitely suggest you watch it, especially if you've watched the other Quiet Place films. It's very cool. The adults will like this. We don't have any politics-driven nonsense in this film. There's not a lot of stuff like that being, you know, thrown into this film. So it's going to be something you can actually go watch and enjoy it for what it is, and something to get away from what's going on in real life. So, you know, I highly recommend it. And like I said, I think my co-hosts agree with me. But I think they've done really well with this budget. I mean, it looks like it's worth more than $67 million. And like I said, the acting was on point. Everything was good about it visually. But yeah, I think for this budget, pretty good.
Yeah, and something worth pointing out too. You want to talk about budget? 67 mil.
Awesome.
Under 100 mil, filming in New York City. Wow. That is impressive, because you got to think of all the destruction, paying for the setting, paying for
CG
shutting
work,
down.
green screen.
How do you shut down how many city blocks of New York so that you can film a movie? New York, you can't say how many million people that live there, hey, don't go to this section of Manhattan or whatever. We're filming a movie, and we're going to destroy a bunch of stuff on top of it, because life, you know, resumes over there. People are going to work. People, you know, maybe they don't care about the movie, whatever. But you got that going on. But yeah, it was just really impressive. And also another thing to note, it stars, and it took me a minute when I watched it. I was like, that guy looks familiar. Guys, it was Eddie Munson once again fighting aliens. Hell yeah. He didn't have a guitar this time. From Stranger.
But he was in the fight.
But he was in the fight, man. It was weird, because you see him. He's, if you're a fan of Stranger Things, respect. Good, great show. Can't wait for the last season. But it's weird to see him go from long hair, you know, D&D guy, playing absolutely shredding on the guitar, to having his hair cut, and he's like a babbling idiot, and
he was
he's
like a nurse.
crying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was like a nurse,
from
kinda.
from the UK or something, and so it's cool to see him really take off. I'm going to be interested. I'll be watching him in the
His
years
future
to come.
projects,
His
yeah.
future projects, right? I want to see, because like those episodes in, as far as I'm aware, I've never heard of him. I've never heard of him before Stranger Things, never seen him before. And that episode, his performance on that, he played guitar, he played Master of Puppets by Metallica. He actually got hit up by Metallica. They met him, they wanted to hang with him, they said they're fans of the show. They gave him a guitar, and they gave him a lifetime pass to all their shows. So that's just recognition there. But now he's getting into big movie deals like Quiet. So where are we gonna see him next? So he's gonna be somebody to watch out for, I think.
Buttons, I'll let you talk about the budget and then the box office, and then we'll close this episode out. What did you think about them utilizing that budget?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think with these smaller films like this, especially like when we're looking at horror movies, which this is kind of a side of horror, but it's also very much a suspense and action movie, but I'd still kind of throw it into a creature feature, which is an offshoot of horror. So I think it's a great budget. They did a really good job as far as the visuals. Most of the story doesn't actually have a lot of scenes with them, which is true of the first two films as well. There's a couple of scenes where it's very heavy on the creatures, but for the most part, it's more about human interaction. So that is what's saving them on their budget, because there's not a whole lot of need for special effects in these. There's a few practical effects, but for the most part, you're either just human to human interaction or there's monsters. And for the most part, you're seeing them just stream by really fast in this movie with, I thought Kage said it perfectly. It's a stampede through the city. Like, you just kind of, they rush by and they're on screen for all of like 20 seconds of just like climbing all over the place or running through the street. And then, you move on to the next part. There are some really good scenes as far as up close where they're close to the actors, doing their whole little fun, listening thing where they peel back their exoskeleton and they reveal their gushy soft spots. And that character design for those, it does actually, it's funny because it does kind of remind me of the character design of the flower people from Stranger Things.
The Demogorgon
yeah.
with the opening face.
Yeah.
Again, with the same character.
So it's similar in that sense, but of course these are their own thing, and so I think the character design for the monster is great. They do a great job, and they've flowed that through without having too much differences to where you're like, wait, did they change color? Are they different sizes? Because with some of the, we've talked about before with like Godzilla, like where it's like, oh, he's small, now he's big, now he's small, now he's big. And for the most part, they've kept the size consistent with these creatures in this movie. So I thought they did a great job with the budget. I feel like it also helps their box office ultimately, because these movies, they're doing well, but they're not, becoming to where they're like $1 billion box office hits. They're just, making it to where it's like, hey, this was a good story. There's enough people showing interest in it that are enjoying it, and it's successful in that sense. So as long as they are keeping their budget small, I think they're going to continue to see a good return on their investment for those.
Yeah, like we said, this movie was going to have to rely heavily on the fan base of A Quiet Place, and I think the fan base showed up. So very good for A Quiet Place day one. With that being said, guys, we're going to end it here for this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and share with a friend. Does anybody else on the panel have anything to add before we close this one out?
I think we have covered it.
Yeah.
Buttons, you good?
Yeah, we're good.
All righty, guys, be safe and stay tuned for another episode of the Popcorn Square podcast. Later.